Hello. For 2018 ERM cycle, we are bringing a series of videos to familiarize you with the new application, the changes what we have made in the new application compared to 15, 16 and 16, 17, and also in terms of concepts what has changed. So this is the first one in that series, and this video primarily focus on the what has changed between the previous versions and the new versions. So in this first video, we will quickly go through the various key improvements which we have made in the system. These improvements are based on the feedback we received from UNBOA, Audit Advisory Committee, OAIS, and other stakeholders. As you mentioned, the first thing which we did that we aligned this to the calendar year in terms of January to December. So it won't be called 15-16 or 16-17 assessment. It will be called 2018 assessment, and the next assessment will be due in 2019, sometime in the first quarter of the 19. What we have done that we have also added a new wrongdoing category. In the past we had two categories called strategic risk area and fraud risk area. This time we have, and there was one wrongdoing under fraud risk area, the last one, which has been so we have created a separate category called wrongdoing category. So we have three now. We have a strategic risk area, fraud risk area, and wrongdoings as a separate category. Then under wrongdoing, we have also added two new risk factors. These are two PSCA related risk factor. This is our initial efforts to address this prevention of sexual exploitation and abuse risk factors. And you will see them, these two new risk factors, when you undertake the assessment, and we'll talk more about this risk factor in the video on risk assessment. Then in the area of additional risk, we have improved the management of additional risk. In the past, you could only send as an additional risk in a text box, and there was no possibility of assigning focal point or adding a risk assessment of the additional risk, which we have changed now. Now the additional risk will have almost same capability as a corporate risk register that you have. So in this way you will be able to create a mitigation plan. You can assign a rating, and you can also create a mitigation plan even for these additional risks. Well, one new big change in the new application is the entry of causes, potential impacts, and the probability of occurrence of particular risk. In the past, we did introduce this concept of potential impact, the probability, and causes, but there was no entry into the system itself, and this was more to be done in the justification box. Uh, but the results of the assessments were not so good in our previous review. So BOA recommended that we should have some online entry of the causes and the probability and the impact. So in the new application, you will have entry of impact, probability, and the causes, which means that there will be no assessment by you, in the sense that you will only enter the impact and probability, and on the basis of the entries that you have made in the probability and impact, system will automatically calculate the risk rating of that risk factor. Is it not interesting? The justification box is still there, but we have refined the guidance note in this sense. What will go in the justification is the basis of probability and impact which you have identified for that risk factor, and not necessarily the rating of the risk factor, which was the case in the previous version. Just to mention that the not applicable category still exists, and for that category you will have to assign zero probability and zero impact. So once you pick up zero probability and zero impact, then automatically risk will become not applicable. There was a proposal by BOA that there was no feature of adding focal point for the fraud risk factor, and they were of the opinion that it means nobody in the country office or the business unit has been given the responsibility of mitigating the fraud risk factor. So we have added in the new application the assignment of focal point for the fraud risk factor as well as for the wrongdoing. Well, quality review of the assessment was always a challenge in the previous launches, because the validation of the assessment, which was done by the regional approvers, there was a feeling that there is no supporting documentation provided to the regional approval before they decide whether this assessment is validated or is okay or is not okay. So what we have done, we have added an additional requirement of uploading a file, which is, you can call it justification file. It's a we are giving a template for this, and you will have to fill the template for each risk factor by giving some information we have in the guidance note, and you have to upload that file in the system. Without uploading the file, you can't even submit the assessment for validation by the regional approver. Now this brings to the other feature which we have added in the system, is the automatic workflow notification to the regional approvers. The moment you submit the assessment for validation, an automatic email will go to the regional approval who is defined in the SIS for your business unit, and they will review. They will get an email, and then they can open the system, and then they can see the document which you uploaded, and then they will have two options: either they can validate the assessment or they can send it back for revision. So this automatic notification also brings another feature called online approval. In the previous versions, the approval or the validation was done by the business unit itself, but offline through email there was a communication happening between the business units and the regional approver. But now this has become in the system itself, so regional approver will be able to go to the system and validate the assessment of the business unit. Well, there's one good news. The good news is that there is no action plan requirement in the new system. We don't have to prepare any action plan in the 2018 risk assessment stage. Why so? Because we are launching risk assessment and risk response actually together, which primarily means that you will be able to undertake risk response immediately after risk assessment is validated. So once a risk uh, assessment is validated by the regional approver, immediately you can start the risk response, and the preparing action plan is a part of risk response stage and not actually the risk assessment stage. So no action plan requirement for the risk assessment stage. It will be done in the risk response stage, which is the primary first step for any risk response. And the last good feature is the ability to undertake the differentiated risk assessment for selected business units. What does it mean? As we have given promise to the BOA and to the board that for 2018 our aim is to have a robust quality assurance mechanism for the risk assessment, and that's why we have given this issue of template uploading for the regional approver. At the same time, the new application also support that we can undertake differentiated risk assessment for different program or for a different context. What I mean that suppose some countries are operating in a fragile context, we can add some additional risk factor for them, and also we can do some facilitator based risk assessment for them. I will talk about them more when we do the risk assessment. And of course, with these new changes, we have also improved the PDF and the export features of the application. So with this, I've come to the end of this brief video. Please look for the next video, which will be on the how to conduct risk assessment in the system, where I'll highlight only the new changes. Thank you.